Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday's edition of Take 5. I hope your week has gone well. We are looking at the Sermon on the Mount in our Take 5. We're taking 5 minutes and listening to Jesus' words to his disciples as well as to us 2,000 years later. And the relevancy of those words that span those years is amazing. We're in a section in chapter 5 where Jesus is telling us basically how to live. And how to live has to do with from the inside out, from your heart to your actions. So he says it's not just about, the rule isn't just don't murder, it's also watch your hatred. The rule is don't just commit adultery, don't do that, but it's also about your lust. And today he's taking the adultery lust thing to the next level, and that is the consequences of adultery, the consequences of unguarded, out of bounds sexual behavior. And that, of course, is divorce. On a number of levels, I have experienced divorce. My parents were divorced when I was a teenager. It was really traumatic for me as a kid, as I had to choose which parent I wanted to live with. And it's affected me and my ministry in a number of ways, including ever since I've been in pastoral ministry, I've somehow, one way, shape, or form, been a part of divorce recovery ministries and divorce care, because I've seen the pain and the damage that can occur through divorce. And yet I've also seen the healing and the love and the grace that can also come as well. And maybe you've experienced that also. Jesus takes the subject of divorce, and he's really clear. And I think he's clear because he's dealing with the ramifications of a broken family and a broken marriage. And again, there can be healing from it. And yet, Christ is so serious about the covenant that is made in marriage, and is so serious about maintaining that covenant and not looking at it loosely. And that's why his words are really clear when it comes to divorce. Let me just walk through it, and then we'll end the week with that. And remember, it's depending on how you hear this. If you are experienced of divorce, hear God's grace and God's healing for you. If you're in a marriage, hear God saying, protect it, be careful. You don't want to go down this road. Here's what he says. In Matthew 5, starting in verse 31. It was also said, he's now quoting the Old Testament, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. He's quoting Moses, and Moses allowed for the hardness of people's hearts divorce to occur. Wasn't the perfect scenario. It was basically an allowance when there was hardness of heart, when there was adultery, or even in the New Testament, we'll learn when an unbelieving spouse abandons a believing spouse. The allowance is there. So hear that. It's not God's perfect plan. It's a covenant, and God wanted that covenant to remain. And when it doesn't, the ramifications are serious. But when there is damage due to adultery and due to abandonment, God allows it. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, now watch, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. What's he saying here? Real quickly, let's explain it. I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality. That word is porneo, it's where we get pornography. In other words, if you just divorce someone flippantly, because of irreconcilable differences, because you're not willing to work through the difficulties of a relationship. When you do that, you're breaking a covenant that shouldn't be broken. And especially in this context, he says, and when you do it, you are making her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. In Jesus' culture, a woman especially, a little different today, in Jesus' culture, a woman especially needed the protection, even the financial protection of marriage. And so if she was divorced in an inappropriate manner and then got married again because of her need for protection, he's saying that just wasn't right. And the committing of adultery, in a sense, is saying because your divorce was so flippant, you really didn't deal with the first marriage. That's basically what he's saying. All that to say, this all stems out of lust and adultery and the ramifications of that. When adultery occurs, so much is broken, including sometimes the covenant of marriage. Be careful if you're married. Again, if you're divorced, find God's healing and God's grace. Don't see divorce as something flippant. See it as something really serious. See it as something covenant breaking, but not something that God's grace can miss. Okay. We end the week with that. We begin next week about how important it is to keep your promise. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. So long.